Each year, 30,000 people in the UK experience sudden cardiac arrest while going about their daily lives. That's 80 hearts a day that will unexpectedly stop beating. Less than 1 in 10 of these people will survive. Imagine if that person was your partner, parent, friend, or child. Cardiac arrest could happen to you, me, or anyone, no matter who we are or where we are, and it can strike without warning. Every minute counts in cardiac arrest. Giving immediate CPR can double someone's chances of surviving it. Knowing CPR could be the difference between holding your loved ones again or losing them forever. Minutes spent learning CPR can mean a lifetime saved. The British Heart Foundation's Reviver campaign puts this power in your hands. Taking their free 15-minute online CPR course means you could be ready to act in an emergency. My name's Victoria, and I'm a feature writer at patient.info. To emphasise the importance of learning CPR, I'm giving a voice to those whose lives have been affected by cardiac arrest, survivors, families, and even the heroes who've performed this life-saving skill. One such voice is Emma, a mum of 2 from Kirkburton in West Yorkshire, whose swift response in getting help for her husband Matt inspired a community-wide CPR movement. This is Emma's story. Hi Emma, thanks for agreeing to speak with me today about the importance of learning CPR. Could you please tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yep, so I'm Emma Kenyon. I live in Huddersfield, West Yorkshire, with my husband and my 2 children, Sebastian, who's 10, and Dorothy, who's 5. I'm a trained graphic designer, and I worked for 11 years for Hallmark Cards as a designer and then a creative manager. And I left there about 8 years ago to be a stay-at-home mum and support my husband, who was starting his own graphic design company.
I understand you went through what I can only assume was a very frightening experience with your husband Matt a few years ago when you had to suddenly perform CPR on him at home. Can I just ask, did you have any knowledge of how to perform CPR before this experience?
No knowledge of any first aid or CPR or using defibrillators or anything like that.
And in your own time, could you describe what happened the day that Matt went into cardiac arrest?
Yeah, so it was just a normal day. Well, say normal. It was coming to the end of the final throes of the lockdowns, the January, I think it was the 3rd lockdown that we'd had, was it January 2021? It was actually the beginning of February, the day it happened, and we'd just had a normal lockdown day and had our takeaway. And my husband he didn't feel very well. He'd gone to bed early the night before, actually, at about 9 o'clock, which isn't like him. He was only 39 at the time and fit and well, not overweight, no medical conditions that we knew about. So I thought it was a bit strange that he'd gone to bed early 2 nights in a row, but that was that, and I stayed up a little bit just watching something on the TV. Went up to bed at about 11 o'clock and actually startled him when I got into bed, and it sort of woke him up with a start, and then he just couldn't really settle back off to sleep. He sort of said that he had this bad indigestion, and he was in the bathroom at this point and doubled over the toilet and just not looking very well at all. And I was like, "You okay?" So I think he was like, it's just this pain in my chest. And then he sort of like laid on his chest in the bed to try and sort of alleviate this pain in his chest. And then he started saying he had this pain in his arms, that sort of in the inside joint of his elbow. He was sort of feeling both his arms like this and going, my arms are killing. And he was in a lot of pain at this point, and I could tell he was pacing the foot of the bed, and I just thought, this doesn't sound right. And I was like, well, what does this pain feel like? And he's like, oh, it's just like my pressure in my veins. But this pain in his chest it wasn't a pain in his chest like you hear of a heart attack. It was heartburn, basically. But then he was saying that his back was hurting. He was saying, oh, can you just come and like massage my back and see if I can get rid of this like knot in my back? And when I went over to him, where he pointed to was actually his shoulder. And I was sort of starting to add all these things up, this sort of like heartburn, which my dad has had a heart attack about 20 years ago when I was at home. I kind of always had it in my head that it's a pain down your left arm for a heart attack, 'cause that's, where the veins are from your heart. And anyway, I was getting on Google like you do, and pain in arm, heart attack, and it said on there, it could be down one side or both sides. And it was saying the shoulder pain and pain in your jaw as well, and all these symptoms. So I was reading all these symptoms out, and one of them was, do you have a feeling of impending doom? And we kind of had a little bit of a giggle about it. And he was like, oh, well, no, not anymore, but I did a minute ago, and all this stuff. And I said, I'm just going to ring 111 because I think you're in a lot of pain and I just don't think it's quite right.
So how much time had passed between the onset of Matt's symptoms and your call to 111?
So this was maybe about 30 minutes later, about 11:30, when I decided to ring 111. We decided to move downstairs, and it sort of started to feel a bit better then. Towards the end of the phone call, the call handler sort of said, can I speak to him? Because at the beginning, he wasn't really in a fit state to speak because he was in quite a lot of pain. And he'd kind of got a little bit better by this point. So he came on and asked all the same questions again. And it was going up to midnight by this point. And then I could just hear the woman saying, are you in so much pain that you can't go about your daily business? And he was like, no, I feel all right now. And I sort of like jumped in and said, well, you might feel all right now, but you didn't half an hour ago. Like, that's why I've rung. Like, you were really pacing the room in pain. So she sort of decided, we'll send an ambulance just to check you over, you make sure everything's okay. So they come off the phone at midnight and said, I'll go get some clothes on, someone's coming. So I just sat downstairs in my pyjamas, sat on the chair in the living room waiting, looking out the window. He came back down. And so I said, I feel a bit silly now, like, feel absolutely fine. And then no sooner as he said he felt okay and sat down, he just went, I've gone really dizzy. And I looked over to him and he was drip white. And then his head just went back on the sofa and his sort of mouth went open and he did this loud, like, snort. And it was a bit like, I sort of laughed at first because it's the kind of thing that Matt would do, like having a joke, like, I'm really tired. And it was literally like that. Like when someone closes their eyes, puts their head back and like does like a fake snore. It was just like that it did. And for a split second, I was like, he's being stupid. But as I got over to him, I could see that he was unconscious. His eyes had gone into the back of his head. And I thought, he's just passed out, like he's had a bit of a funny turn and I'll get him on the floor and he'll come round, So I got him on the floor and then I rang 999 and I just said, the ambulance is on its way for my husband. He's having a suspected heart attack, but he's actually unconscious.
You told me earlier, Emma, that the 999 operator actually helped you perform CPR on Matt. Were her instructions clear and easy to understand?
She was really good, but very I needed her to be firm. I can remember her shouting at me at one point because I think I must have been sort of quite hysterical and sort of screaming because she asked me to turn him onto his back. And I can remember being quite confused and thinking, why am I putting him on his back? He don't want to be on his back if he's unconscious, sort of thing. So anyway, as I rolled him over, I could see that he'd completely stopped breathing and he was sort of blue in the face and his eyes were bulging and there was foam coming out of his mouth and it was awful to sort of see his face. That's sort of the main thing that's kind of stays with me now and probably the thing that got me kind of into the hysterical state. But, she calmed me down and she said, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. And she was really clear and concise in what she said. And I put my phone on loudspeaker and she told me to overlap my hands together in between his nipples on his chest and push down really hard. And I had to push down 2.5 inches. I remember thinking how far that is at 6 centimetres. And I repeated it back to her and I was like, 6 centimetres. And she was like, yeah, push down to this beat. And it's to the rhythm of Staying Alive. And I think that's what they use in some of the campaigns. And it's quite an easy rhythm to remember. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's quite fast. It takes a lot of strength to do it because you're having to push the blood from the heart and try and get it all the way around the body. I can remember the first push and I felt and heard a crunch and the sternum detaches from the ribs. And, you can sometimes break ribs, but at this point, this person's dead. So, you can't do any harm at this point. So I was doing that and she kept on counting and he kept taking these sort of gasps of breath, which I know now is something called agonal breathing. And it's sort of the body trying to get some oxygen sort of into the cells and into the blood. So he kept kind of taking these gasps and it was sort of like, he's breathing, but it wasn't. It's kind of like just a response of the body that happens. And so the call handler said, you keep counting with me and let me know every time he takes a breath and things like that. And I think that just like keeps you going.
How long were you doing CPR on Matt before the emergency services arrived?
Now, luckily, I'd made the phone call to 111 and the ambulance was already on its way. I think they dispatched it at about midnight, and then I made the 999 call at 18 minutes past midnight. So it was already 18 minutes on its way from its destination in Honley, which is about 25 minutes away. So they were literally down the road. I think they were only about 3 or 4 minutes from the house when they got the 999 call. So I think I was doing CPR for about 6 minutes, I think they said in the end, and he was actually in cardiac arrest for about 8 minutes. Within this 6 minutes, I realised that the front door was still locked, so they couldn't get in when they arrived, because obviously, like, while we were waiting for the ambulance, there was no signs of that he was ill. He said that he felt completely fine. I'd previously witnessed my dad having a heart attack, and he was blue in the face, he was sweating, it was obvious that he was having a heart attack from what you know to be the signs of a heart attack. And even then, not having that knowledge of what I have now of how closely connected a heart attack is to a cardiac arrest, being very different, and very different in the severity as well, and just not having that knowledge of the connection. So yeah, I had to like leave him to go and run and unlock the door and come back for a few seconds. They made their way in and sort of took over from me, and they used the defibrillator and shocked his heart. Well, it actually stops the heart, does the defibrillator, and then the hope is that it gets back into its correct rhythm then once it sort of restarts itself, really, after it's been stopped. And he came round after the first defibrillation, which was really good news. But at this point, I still didn't understand really what was happening, the severity of what had happened, if he was going to be okay. And we were there quite a while. There was still snow on the ground. It had snowed the previous day. We were in quite a remote location, and my mum was coming up from her house, and it was taking her ages, and I wanted to go to the hospital with him, but they were waiting to see where there was going to be a bed at Halifax or at Wakefield. So they had him in the ambulance outside the house for what seemed like forever. But we eventually went off in the ambulance, and it was very lucky that the bed became free at Leeds, because they managed to get him straight in for a stent, which is where they put sort of like a little balloon in the artery that's blocked, which is basically what's caused the heart attack. But then whilst people are having a heart attack, they're at risk of the cardiac arrest because the heart gets into sort of like a funny rhythm. So he had the stent to open that artery back up that had got blocked, which caused the heart attack. So he managed to get into that really quickly, because he would have had to get transferred to Leeds from wherever he'd gone. A strange night out of the blue, really.
So despite you having a lack of CPR knowledge at the time, your quick thinking and concern for your husband, as in calling for help and listening to the advice of the emergency operator, played a huge role in saving his life.
There were so many things that had happened that were luck, that if they'd have not happened like that, like if I had not have gone up to bed and like woken him up when I went up, like he probably would have just died in his sleep. If I'd have not like pre-rung 111 before and just waited, because he was starting to feel better whilst I was on the phone, if I'd have not already done that and they'd decided to send the ambulance to check him over anyway, obviously like there'd have been an ambulance 25, it'd have been too long, and getting the bed at Leeds and everything that happened just happened so well, really.
How has your life changed for you and your family since you helped save Matt's life using CPR?
Since Matt's had his heart attack and cardiac arrest, I set up a Facebook group called Local Lifesavers. So you can find that at facebook.com/Local Lifesavers 999. And that's basically just people in my local community, just trying to get them all in one place to be able to advertise these training sessions. So it started off at first where I was raising money for this community CPR kit. It's called Call Push Rescue Kit, and it's sort of a big red bag, and it's got 10 inflatable CPR mannequins in, and like a DVD that you can play that shows sort of a group of up to 10 people like how to do CPR. So I raised the money sort of through this Facebook page and through some just local fundraising with Sebastian's school. He did some baking and sold that. And so we did a few bits to raise for this kit. And then during that, some local press got in touch because they'd seen sort of me advertising this fundraising and things. And Yorkshire Ambulance got in touch with me. A lady called, I'll have to send you a name because it's completely gone. Her job is to actually facilitate CPR training in community. So she got in touch with me after sort of seeing what I was doing online, I think, and said that she would come and do in the flesh training, which was much better because it meant that I could do more than 10 people. And it was quite overwhelming, actually. Once I'd kind of started that ball, I knew I wanted to do something, but actually it was quite traumatic what happened. And it was quite scary, the thought of having to sort of address people and not show them how to do it because you just play a DVD really, but coming from a professional point of view, not having any like formal training or anything like that, this was ideal because it's somebody that can come and actually show you, give you pointers, make sure you're doing it correctly, answer any questions, things like that. So Joanne got on board and we've been running these courses now. It started off at Sebastian's school in Kirkburton and we did 2 evenings. I think there was about 40 people in each session. That was during COVID still. We were all like 2 meters apart and it was just really good. I got a really good, loads of people wanted to do it and get involved. So I've been doing that for the last sort of 3.5 years now, and we've done them. Last year we held one in the Emily Moore Working Men's Club. So we ran the courses, and through these courses, people donated money. It was a free course, but people donated money anyway. And then I wanted to sort of donate money to British Heart Foundation and Yorkshire Ambulance Service. So I was still like collecting money at these courses, but Joe put me in touch with grants that they do at Yorkshire Ambulance Service for defibrillators in the community. So they do some grants where you put £1,000 towards and they provide the case and everything like that. We raised the money for a public access defibrillator, which is at Emily Moore Working Men's Club, and held another session there for the CPR training. And what she actually does is runs through defibrillator awareness training at the same time, because these machines are made so that you don't have to have any training, and you don't have to have any training to do CPR. I've done it and saved my husband's life just from the call handler telling me over the phone how to do it. But it's just giving you that confidence of knowing that you're capable and that you're doing the right thing. So she sort of has a training defibrillator there that it talks to you basically. You press an on button and it talks to you and it gives you a beat and it talks you through the CPR as well on the defibrillator, because in between shocks you're doing the CPR as well. So people have given really good feedback from that and found it really useful and said they would be confident in giving CPR to friends, family or strangers in the street after doing that. There's about 300 people that have come to those courses now over the last few years. So that's 300 people that before that had no experience, no training, no awareness, that might not have been able to sort of step in and do anything, whereas hopefully they would now.
That's incredible. Your story is a real demonstration of how a single incident can inspire a community to come together and achieve so much. Can I ask how your husband Matt is doing today?
Matt's doing well. He's at his yearly checkup the year after he had the cardiac arrest. He had sort of a scan on his heart and that checks for damage, because whilst you're having a heart attack, it's the flow of blood to the heart's being stopped for certain areas. So if that's for any length of time, parts of the muscle can die. But he has no lasting damage to his heart, so that's really good. And he's got his stent in now that opened up that artery that caused it in the first place. So he's on all his medication and everything that he will be for life anyway now. But yeah, it's really good. It just changes perspective a little on life when you have something like that happen so young as well. He closed his business down that he was running and went freelance for a little bit and just took it a little bit easier for a year, but he's back to himself now and he's got a new company and he's been running that for just over a year as well. So,
and I think I already know the answer to this, but would you encourage others to learn CPR?
I would definitely recommend people get trained in CPR. Full first aid training is lengthy, expensive, but I'm running these things for free. There is hopefully people in other communities doing the same sort of thing. But if you've not got access to any formal training, you can just go on the British Heart Foundation website and there's a Reviver campaign. It takes 15 minutes. You watch a video, you can practice at home on a pillow, and that would be enough to just maybe give you the confidence and just having that awareness.
Be like Emma and become a CPR hero in just 15 minutes. Help yourself to help save a life with Reviver, the free online training course from the British Heart Foundation. It's effortlessly simple and super easy to do. Just visit www.reviver.bhf.org.uk to learn vital, life-saving CPR skills. Be the difference between life and death, and change someone's future forever.